Evening, good morning, and good evening, good morning, and good night. Welcome to Inappropriate Radio. It's your host, Tashana. Let's get into this. So, hi guys. I hope all is well. Not sure if you've been following, but yesterday we discussed the importance of money and why you would need money. And the topic was basically a question, right? We posed a question. Now tonight's topic is also going to be about currency, right? As we know, currency is a current, right? It's flowing energy. So you have currents in water. The current can be right now. Let's just open our minds up to this, right? So I was doing a little research because, as you all know, we are in the middle of inflation and the US dollar is acting crazy, and a lot of countries have decided to no longer use the US dollar, which probably means we're going to be a third world country soon. Now, what does this have to do with spirituality and warfare? I'm going to tell you. Okay, so first of all, China, Russia, Brazil, Kenya, Saudi Arabia, the Association of Southeast Asian nations like Indonesia, Thailand, the Philippines, Vietnam, and Singapore, right, have all decided to do business with their own dollars as opposed to using the US dollar. Now, why is this a big deal? This is a big deal because the US dollar is considered the global currency, right? This is the dollar, or the form, or let's just say the unit of currency that is the most common, meaning that central banks hold it in significant quantities, right? Like in their banks, okay? So, now, the dollar has been declining since 1993, right? We always go through these waves of inflation where everything goes up, and then by, the grace of God, we get back, to regular, right? Well, why this is different is because no one or no country, right, had ever decided to no longer use the dollar, the US dollar. Now, okay, they have this thing called the index, right? I mean, this is all Googleable, is basic common information, but we are finding the connection between this currency exchange, right, and spiritual warfare. We're getting there, right? Now, they have this index, right? And this is like a measure for how the value of the dollar is measured, and is basically compared against the market in the currency of the yen, the euro, the British pound, the Australian dollar, right? These major markets. Now, this is not to say that the dollar is the most valuable, because the dinar is, right? You have the Kuwaiti, the dinar of Kuwaiti. Now, they have different dinars. They have the Jordanian, the Kuwait, the Siberian, the Tunisian, the Yugoslavia, right? These are all countries that have this particular unit, okay? Like the dollar is not only for the American money, right? This unit is not only here. Now, then they have this thing called the black index, the black dollar index, right? Same thing, but it just measures the spending of the black consumers, which has showed that black Americans spend more than $1 trillion in a year alone. So that is like a market all by itself. Now, this is where it gets tricky, because if these countries are pulling out of the dollar, right, out of using the dollar, and they're taking their business elsewhere, that means we're going to lose the spot as the global currency reserve, because what that means is that more people do business in and with the US dollar, in the US and its dollar, right? So more business goes on here and using the money that's from here, right? Now, we are going to be forced to engage with people from other countries, right? And this is where the spiritual component comes in, because now you're forced to tap in to different things. So this is where we've been discussing, right? Learning new languages, okay? Learning different customs of different cultures is going to be very important. Me, if you're like me, then you know the Spanish and Mandarin is probably going to be the main two. Okay, Mandarin is the national language of China, and of course we know what Spanish is, right? Yeah. Okay, so that's number one. So we're going to be unlocking those genetic codes that are related to our lineage, number one, and we're going to be diving into cultures that are related to our lineage, meaning this America, yes, black people have been here, but now because we're going to be traveling and ultimately interacting with other cultures, right, then we are forced to enhance and upgrade our own spiritual awareness, because now we're becoming more conscious, right? We're becoming more enlightened, okay? Now, some things to combat this, right? Obviously, if you're poor, you're poor. That doesn't mean you don't know anything. It just means that you don't have the resources to be able to make certain changes, right? Now, when you look at this particular system, okay, you're going to see, like we've already mentioned some of these countries, and I think it's so interesting because China, Russia, Brazil, Kenya, and Saudi Arabia all have really interesting relations and connections to the past and to slavery, right? I always say, like, where was China and Russia when slavery was going down? You don't really hear much of those countries partaking, right? I don't know. I mean, these countries were found, right? They were already in existence. Brazil, majority of the slaves were dropped off in Brazil. Kenya's Kenya. Saudi Arabia is what? One of those countries. Listen, y'all. Just look at the links. The ancestors are bussing out and they're not playing no more. That's all I'm saying. Now, let's get back to this. If you want to combat some of this, some of the ways are to possess land, to possess metals, IRA metals, or have foreign assets. So foreign assets can be any investment that you made that's outside of the American market. So like if you have foreign real estate, if you have bank accounts in another country, like things like that, anything that's outside of this particular market. Now, as far as metals, right, you can actually have the metals, but you can have the IRA metals, which basically is like a stock or a bond or, you know, like a mutual fund, but it just rolled over and allows you to have access to gold or silver. Now, these metals have to be, I believe it's gold, silver, platinum, palladium, and they have to be at a certain level of purity for you to even be able to do that, right? I know one, I think it's 1 gram is about 1,800, I believe. And 1 ounce of gold, of almost 100% pure gold, is from 18 to 1900. You can look that up, right? But the overall gist is to start looking at other ways for your money to be translated. I'm not a financial expert. I don't have all this knowledge and information about money and assets and, maintaining funds. But I will say that the more research that I'm starting to do, the more it makes sense. Like, right? Money is currency. Currency is energy. Energy is fluid. It doesn't sit still. It's not dormant. So just pay attention to where the money is going. Where is the money residing right now, right? Where is this money going? And this is a live recording, so if I mess up, I'm not going to be able to erase it, and I'm not going to erase it because this is a live recording, okay? So now, we used to have a gold standard. It was Nixon that had removed the standard about like 50 years ago or so. So ever since then, we've kind of been bare. No, oil does not back the dollar up. Also, like having natural resources. So that's another one. In real estate, if you want to have any commodities, any metals, natural resources. So like oil would be one. These would be some things that you will want to get your hands on to avoid falling into the average consumer's position, meaning everyone is going to be experiencing inflation and a bunch of scarcity because the dollar is in so much trouble. Now, again, I'm not an expert. We're just speaking in terms of spirituality. And like I'm saying, if you pay attention to the countries that have already agreed to use their own units of currency and have pulled out of doing business with the U.S., has a crazy history with the country already, right? Now, China is said to hold the most amount of U.S. currency on reserve. They have $3.12 trillion. Okay, so again, very interesting. And these reserves are for times like this, right? If we run out of money, they have this money at their exposure, right? They have it at their disposal. But the thing is, the actual common consumer obviously doesn't have $3.12 trillion, right? So you want to be able to put yourself in a position where you can freely flow. This is currency. Even if you don't have an IRA metal IRA, if you don't have land, if you don't have any foreign assets, even if you don't have natural resources, you can find ways to move about. So again, back to yesterday's topic, like, do you feel like you need so much money? Because basically a check, a money order, and a dollar bill is basically the same thing. Like, basically, that's the point that I'm making. It's no difference between a check, a dollar, and a money order. Okay, so the emphasis that we're placing on these tangible things, we need to just try to educate ourselves more on really what is valuable, what should be valuable, what's the most valuable to God, and what should be most valuable to you as a human, right? And before we go, I just want to say and stress that I am not a financial expert. I don't have a bunch of experience and knowledge dealing with large, granular lump sums of money. And I'm going to pass down some generational wealth, right? But and I intend on learning about these things. But just this whole black dollar index thing should just give you an idea of how much energy we put out there that we don't get back, right? Because the average black person has way less money than everybody else who's a part of the market, right? And our money is backed by our trust and like the economic power, like who we are globally, what we stand to for the world globally. So all that has to do, only thing that has to happen is people need to stop using the dollar, and then wherever the most business is, they're going to become basically the new America. Okay? So yeah, I love y'all. Hope y'all been drinking y'all water, eating y'all fruit and y'all vegetables, and sipping on y'all tea because it's free, and getting y'all rest. All right? Love y'all.